I was 12 when they found the tumor. Stage 2, Hodgkin's lymphoma. I still remember the sterile smell of the hospital room, the beep of the monitors, and the way my mother's face folded in on itself when the doctor uttered the word cancer. My father sat completely still, like if he didn't move, none of it would be real. The community rallied around us. Neighbors I didn't even know brought casseroles. My school started a GoFundMe campaign. Help Sophie beat cancer. Local. Papers covered it. A pastor prayed over me during a Sunday Mass. Even though my family wasn't religious, the fund raised $118,000. It covered chemo, travel, post-treatment therapies, and all the medications I couldn't even pronounce. It helped save my life. What I didn't know, what no one told me, was that over $40,000 of it remained in a separate family-managed account, meant, according to the fundraiser page, for Sophie's future care and well-being as she continues life beyond cancer. I found out about the kitchen 2 weeks before my high school graduation. It started with the tile, a shiny, marble-patterned tile sitting on the dining table. "Do you like it?" my mom asked, all cheerful. "We're thinking of redoing the kitchen before Madison's baby shower." "Kitchen?" I blinked. "Yeah," she said, pulling out paint swatches. "The cabinets are outdated, and your dad finally agreed we could use the leftover money from the fundraiser. It's been sitting there for years, and it'd really brighten the space, don't you think?" I sat there stunned, like my brain had stepped outside and left my body behind. "Wait, you're using the cancer fund?" "It's not a cancer fund anymore," my dad said sharply from the living room. "It's just a family account now." I stared at them. "Do you not remember what that money was raised for? What people donated it for?" Mom rolled her eyes. "Sophie, it's been 6 years. You're in remission, and you got into college with a scholarship. It's not like you need it. Madison's baby's going to be crawling soon, and we really want a child-safe space." I felt my face go hot. "It's not your money." That's when she dropped the line that would echo in my ears for months. "You're being incredibly ungrateful right now." I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every hospital memory in my head, the taste of metal in my mouth during chemo, my hair falling out in clumps in the bathtub, my mom crying in front of people like she was the one in pain. All that money, raised by strangers for me, and now it was going to pay for Madison's baby, shower hors d'oeuvres and new granite countertops. Madison, my older sister, the family golden child. She got pregnant at 21, moved in with her boyfriend, then back into our house when things didn't work out. She didn't finish college, but Mom called her resilient. She didn't have a job, but Dad said she was between opportunities. I worked 2 part-time jobs, but I was ungrateful. The first phase of the renovation started 2 days before my graduation. Contractors arrived at 7 a.m. They tore down the old cabinets and ripped out the backsplash. Madison kept showing them Pinterest boards while I packed for college in the basement, where my room had been since I turned 15. There was dust in my laundry, sawdust on my bed, and still, no one asked how I felt. Graduation day arrived, and I stood in the mirror adjusting the cheap white dress I bought on clearance. My mom didn't attend the ceremony. She said she had to stay home and supervise the quartz installation. Only Dad came. He sat through the whole thing with a scowl, like I was wasting everyone's time. When I walked the stage, he didn't even clap. But when we got home, they had a surprise for me. A card on the table that said, "So proud of you." Inside was a $50 Starbucks gift card and a post-it note that read, "We'll always love you. Just remember, this is your home too." Except it never felt like mine. Later that night, I walked into the half-finished kitchen and saw it again. The tile. Marble. Shiny. Expensive. And for the first time, I realized something. They didn't just forget what the fundraiser was for. They rewrote the narrative. In their version, they were the ones who sacrificed. They were the ones who helped me survive. So now, they thought they were owed. That was the moment the idea started, forming in my head, not for revenge, not yet, but for clarity. I needed to find the original fundraiser records. I needed proof. Would you like me to continue with part 2, where Sophie starts quietly investigating, collecting documents, and discovering that this betrayal goes deeper than just kitchen tiles? Let me know. I'll keep building the tension in slow-burn cinematic layers. Certainly. Continuing the slow-burn, emotionally rich betrayal arc from part 1, here is. The kitchen was still a mess of sheetrock dust and dangling wires, but that didn't stop my parents from celebrating the installation of the new oven like it was a new baby. Madison had gone to bed early. Apparently being 6 months pregnant and unemployed was exhausting, and the house fell into the kind of silence that only makes rage louder. I crept down the hall and opened the office door. My dad's home. Office hadn't changed since I was a kid. Same faux mahogany desk, same broken printer, but I knew what I was looking for. The drawer on the left, where he kept anything important but annoying. Bills, DMV renewals, tax documents, and, with luck, donation records. My hands trembled as I flipped through the folders. Car, title, warranty, hospital invoices. Then I saw it. Fundraiser account, Sophie, 2017. I stared at it for a long moment before I dared touch it. The folder was thick, uneven. I sat on the floor and opened it with the same reverence someone might use to read a eulogy. Inside, printouts from the GoFundMe page, donation logs, bank transfer statements, everything. They had documented every cent that came in and every cent that went out. At first. Then the entries stopped. Last entry, $42,800. Transferred to family savings account, May 2018. For future use towards Sophie's long-term care, housing, or tuition support. Except none of that happened. I never saw a dime. I paid for my SAT prep classes with babysitting money. I bought my own laptop for school. And my college deposit came from an academic scholarship and leftover federal aid. So what exactly had they spent the money on? I kept reading. 3 months. Aga Home Depot. 7,923.44 Interior Design Consult. 12,100 Cabinetry Express. 13,200 Appliance World. 11,180 The transactions weren't even hidden. Just casually mixed into the family account like it was their birthright. They didn't just steal my future. They made it a remodeling budget. I closed the folder carefully and returned everything to where I found it. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. I was going to build a case. The next day, I started emailing people. First, the GoFundMe campaign organizer. Her name was Alicia, a PTA mom who barely knew us but had a bleeding heart and 2 daughters in my grade. I found her on Facebook, then drafted a message. Hi, Alicia. I hope this isn't weird to ask, but I'm reviewing records from my fundraiser back in 2017 and had some questions about how it was managed. I was really young at the time and I don't remember much. Would you be open to chatting? She responded within an hour. Hi, Sophie. I've thought about you often. I'm so glad to see your name. Of course. I have all the campaign logs saved. Happy to send them over. She emailed me the full donor list, original campaign mission, and screenshots of every major update post my parents had written. My stomach turned when I saw the language. Every cent will go towards Sophie's treatment, recovery, and future medical needs. We are committed to transparency and will be tracking every expense to ensure accountability. My mom had signed each one with "A Grateful Mother." That night, I printed everything. I started my own folder. Red, Sharpie labeled, receipts. But I didn't stop there. I filed a request to pull a credit history report in my name. I don't know why. Just a gut feeling. When people feel entitled to your money, they often feel entitled to your identity too. The report came back clean. No loans, no co-signed. Debt, relief, but also rage. Because it meant the betrayal hadn't just been financial. It was also intentional. They had the money. They knew what it was for. And they chose to use it on backsplashes. A week later, we hosted Madison's baby shower. The kitchen gleamed. Guests raved about the open concept, the investment in the home. I hovered in the corner, clutching a red Solo cup, pretending to drink soda while quietly watching everything. At one point, my Aunt Dina, Mom's older sister, a woman with too much lipstick and zero tact, said, "It's just such a blessing what you've been able to do. You've turned a tragedy into a beautiful home. Most people would have fallen apart after something like Sophie's illness." My mother laughed. Well, we held on. We all made sacrifices. I excused myself to the bathroom before I screamed. But something interesting happened that night. After most of the guests left, I saw Madison sitting on the back porch. She looked tired, older than 23. A half-finished cupcake rested on the railing. "Congrats," I said flatly. She didn't look up. "You know, I didn't ask for the kitchen." I crossed my arms. She glanced over. "I know they used your money. I told Mom not to. Said it was gross. But she said you'd be too grateful to care." My stomach twisted. "She said that?" Madison nodded, then looked away again. "Don't worry. She's not as subtle as she thinks." There was a long silence between us, a crack forming in her perfect image, a thread unraveling, and I realized Madison might be the key. She wasn't innocent, but she wasn't loyal either. She had something to lose, sure, but maybe more to gain. I tucked that away for later, because I was done playing daughter. I was assembling evidence now. I wasn't just going to tell them what they'd done wrong. I was going to make them answer for it. Legally, publicly, or both. And if that meant exposing every donor lie, every embezzled cent, every fake smile they posted for Facebook, so be it. I didn't go back home for 3 days after the baby shower. I stayed in my friend Lena's dorm, where summer students were finishing their courses. The building was quiet, the beds were hard, and the air smelled like old coffee. But it was the first time I'd felt peace in months. I reread the folder. My receipts file. Every time I looked at the list of donors, a new kind of fury brewed. One line that stuck out, circled in pink highlighter, Julie Hernandez, won $200. "We love you, Sophie. This is for your future. You matter." Julie was my 5th grade teacher. She had 3 kids, worked 2 jobs, and still scraped together $1,200 to help me live. Not just survive, live. And now her money was sitting under a ceramic fruit bowl on a kitchen island, I wasn't planning revenge yet. Not fully. But I was thinking about justice. The legal kind. The kind that couldn't be gaslit away. So I reached out to a legal aid clinic downtown. I didn't have the money for a fancy attorney, but the clinic specialized in financial exploitation, especially involving minors and misused donations. The intake coordinator, a woman named Teresa, called me after reviewing the email and attachments I sent. "Sophie," she said gently, "what you're describing may constitute fraud, especially since the fundraiser explicitly stated where the money was going, and you were a minor at the time." I held my breath. "So I have a case?" "You might," she said. "But it's complicated. We'd have to prove intent, not just poor financial decisions. Do you have access to the original GoFundMe campaign, statements, and bank transfers?" "I have all of it, even the donor list. I also have evidence that they used the leftover money for personal renovations, including receipts and bank charges." Teresa was quiet for a moment. "Let's schedule a meeting. I want to go over this in person. And Sophie, if everything checks out, you may not just have a civil case. There might be grounds for public restitution." Public. The word hit me like a shot of espresso. For the first time in years, I felt the power shift, like a trembling scale was beginning to level. When I returned home, no one asked where I'd been. Madison was at a prenatal appointment. My dad was in the garage pretending to fix things that didn't need fixing, and my mother was in the new kitchen, arranging tea towels that still had the tags on them. She didn't look up when I walked in. "We're doing family dinner tomorrow," she said. "You're expected." "I'm busy," I replied. She paused, slowly turned. "You've been very unpleasant lately, Sophie. Everyone's noticed. Even your aunt said you were sulking at the shower." "I'll let her know next time I'm being financially exploited. Maybe then she'll call it spirited." Her face pinched. "You know what? You can drop the attitude. You're acting like we owe you something. We saved you, Sophie. Don't forget who sat beside you every night during chemo. Don't forget who changed your sheets when you were too weak to stand." I stepped forward, calm but shaking. "I haven't forgotten. But you clearly forgot who that money belonged to." She scoffed. "You were a child. We managed it for you." "No," I said quietly. "You stole it. You embezzled donations from people who believed in me. And now you want me to smile because you put their money into granite and scented candles." The silence between us was blistering. Then she laughed. Not a funny laugh, a dry, dismissive one. "I can't believe how entitled you've become." I tilted my head. "You might want to be careful with words like entitled. Courts don't like hearing that kind of thing from people who misused medical fundraiser money." Her hand stopped mid-fold. She blinked once, twice. "You're bluffing." I stared her down. "Try me." Later that night, Madison knocked on my door. She didn't come in, just hovered in the doorway. She was in a hoodie, hair tied back, cheeks pale. "Mom's losing it downstairs," she muttered. "Says you threatened her." "I didn't," I replied. "I just told her the truth." Madison hesitated, then stepped inside. She looked at my desk, the folder, the notes, the highlighted statements. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Not sure yet. Legal clinic wants to meet. There might be a case." She lowered herself onto the edge of the bed, careful of her belly. "You know they'll say you're turning against your own family." I looked at her. Really looked at her. They already turned against me. She didn't argue. She just nodded, slowly, like she understood more than she wanted to admit. Then she reached into her sweatshirt pocket and handed me something, a USB drive. What's this? I used to share a desktop account with Mom when I moved back in. She didn't realize it was still synced. There are emails, bank statements, some messages she sent about the fundraiser. I stared at the tiny plastic stick in my palm. You're giving this to me? I'm giving you what's yours. For the first time, I believed her. Maybe she wasn't an ally, not yet. But she was no longer the enemy. And in war, sometimes, a neutral party is all you need. The next day, I plugged in the USB at Lena's dorm. Inside were folders, labeled renovation quotes, Madison shower, and one just titled Sophie Fund. The last one held screenshots, deleted Facebook posts, bank logins, even a draft email my mother had written but never sent. We have to be careful with how we frame the leftover funds. If anyone asks, we'll say Sophie didn't need them after the scholarship. No one tracks that stuff after a few years anyway. My hands went cold. They hadn't just forgotten. They had plotted. The law office was smaller than I expected. Tucked above a faded bagel shop downtown, the legal aid clinic smelled like old paper, strong coffee, and something faintly lemon-scented, like justice tried to keep itself clean. I clutched my folder, in one hand and the USB drive in the other. Teresa, the intake officer, was younger than I imagined. Maybe late 30s, smart eyes, blazer slightly wrinkled. She greeted me with warmth, but I could tell she'd seen worse. Girls with worse parents, worse trauma, worse outcomes. But still, she didn't blink when I laid out the facts. We sat for nearly an hour as I walked her through the fundraiser, origins, the documents, the USB evidence from Madison, and the recent renovations. I told her what my parents said, what they did. What they claimed was family savings and entitlement. She nodded, writing occasionally, and only interrupted to clarify exact dates. When I finished, Teresa leaned back and folded her hands. You've done more legwork than most clients twice your age. I didn't smile. I've had time. She took a breath. Sophie, here's what this looks like. Potential fraudulent misrepresentation during fundraising, and potential breach of fiduciary duty by your parents, since they managed funds raised in your name as a minor. It's serious. What does that mean legally? It means they can be held accountable, civilly, maybe even criminally, depending on what the DA's office is willing to explore. But it also means you have decisions to make. Like? Teresa opened a folder and slid forward a piece of paper with 2 columns. First option, private civil case. We can issue a demand letter requesting return of the misused funds, or their equivalent, and if they refuse, we sue. Quiet, methodical, courtroom-based. I nodded slowly. And the second? She gave a slight smile. You go public. File a complaint, speak to local media, maybe even contact GoFundMe directly. They hate scandals tied to medical fund misuse. Your story could go wide. That tends to pressure people into settling quickly. My stomach twisted. Would that hurt them? Yes, she said without flinching. Reputationally, financially, socially. My heart beat a little faster. Teresa's voice softened. It's your choice, Sophie. But you need to know, once you go public, you don't get to unring that bell. So if you're doing this, it has to be because you want justice, not just revenge. I thought of the backsplash, of the tile samples, of the baby shower. Of Madison trying to hand me back scraps of evidence like breadcrumbs. Of my mom calling me ungrateful. I looked Teresa in the eye. I want both. Back at home, the atmosphere had changed. My dad stopped talking to me altogether. Not even passive-aggressive silence. Just absence. Like if he ignored me long enough, I'd cease to exist. Mom, on the other hand, started overcompensating. She brought home store-bought lasagna and asked if I wanted any. She left a brochure on the table about online summer internships. She even knocked on my door once and offered to talk through things as a family. But her eyes were twitchy, her voice too soft, like she already sensed the grenade in my pocket. I didn't answer. I just closed the door. 3 days later, I got a call from GoFundMe's internal fraud team. Apparently, Teresa had filed a formal inquiry. The investigator, a man named Jared, asked if I'd be willing to submit my documents. He had already flagged. The campaign is under review and had temporarily frozen the disbursement history linked to the email account my parents used. I just need confirmation you're the intended beneficiary, he said. And if what you say is true, you should know. We've refunded entire campaigns in cases like this before. We may even involve law enforcement if donor intent was clearly violated. I stared at my laptop screen, the cursor blinking. Have the evidence, I told him. They lied. I can prove it. Then let's hold them accountable, Jared said. That night, Madison knocked again. But this time, she came with questions. They froze the account, she whispered. Mom's been calling the bank all day. What's happening? I filed. I said plainly, with GoFundMe, and I'm meeting with legal aid again next week. There's a case. Madison dropped onto the bed like her knees buckled. You're serious. They took money that people gave to help me survive and used it to install a ice maker. Madison. She buried her face in her hands. You don't know what it's been like. Ever since you got sick, everything was about you, but also not about you. It was about appearances, about Mom playing the strong caregiver, about Dad pretending we were united. I was the one who disappeared. I had to fail quietly so they could keep the narrative neat. I stared at her. This was the closest she'd come to owning anything. I'm not asking for your apology, I said. But if you want to help fix it, you can testify. Madison looked up, her face twisted. Hesitation, fear, guilt. I'll think about it. The next morning, I found a manila envelope on my pillow. Inside, printed emails, dated bank statements, a signed note from the fundraiser's bank withdrawal in 2018, with my mother's signature and a post-it that read, Remaining balance. Transferred to family account for home project planning. It was from Madison. No words, no explanation, just proof. And with it, the last piece I needed to move forward. The manila envelope sat on my lap as I stared at the blank screen in front. Of me, I hadn't opened my email yet, hadn't written the draft Teresa asked for, but it was time. I took a deep breath and began typing. Subject: Formal statement of complaint to whom it may concern. My name is Sophie Lang. I was the named beneficiary of a GoFundMe fundraiser started in 2017 during my treatment for Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was 12 years old at the time. The campaign raised over $118,000, most of which was initially used for medical treatment and recovery expenses. However, as I've recently discovered, over $40,000 of that money, which was explicitly designated for my long-term care and well-being, was transferred into a family-controlled savings account and later used for personal home renovations without my knowledge or consent. I am now seeking restitution for the misused funds and public acknowledgement of the misuse, as this represents a serious breach of donor trust and exploitation of a minor. I have attached all supporting documents, including account transfers, receipts, internal emails, and additional evidence. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Sophie Lang. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. By the next morning, everything changed. The first domino fell with a phone call from Jared at GoFundMe. "They're officially escalating the case," he said. "You may be contacted by an external legal team or press liaison. Also, Sophie, we issued a notice of inquiry to the original campaign email. Your parents received it this morning." I sat up straighter. What does that mean? It means the clock has started. By lunchtime, the house was on fire. Not literally, but emotionally. It might as well have been. I came home to find my mother pacing in the front yard, phone pressed so tightly to her ear it looked fused. Her voice was too loud, too forced, like she knew the neighbors were watching. "I never misused anything. They're trying to twist it. She's unstable. She's always been jealous of Madison." She saw me, froze, then turned her back and walked inside. My dad was already waiting in the living room. Not on the couch. No, he was standing, arms crossed. The last time he stood like that was the day I came out as bisexual. That day ended with him slamming a door and refusing to speak to me for a week. History was rhyming. "What the hell did you do?" he asked coldly. I dropped my bag. I told the truth. "You went to lawyers? You got GoFundMe involved? Are you trying to ruin your mother?" "She ruined herself," I said calmly. "She took money meant to help me survive and bought pendant lights." He shook his head. "You're making a scene out of nothing. That money was ours. We raised it as a family." "No. People gave it to help me. You were supposed to manage it. You were supposed to protect it. And protect me." His jaw tightened. "We've done everything for you." "No," I replied, voice sharper now. "You did everything for you. You needed a cause. You needed a story. And you used my sickness to build it." From the top of the stairs, Madison watched in silence, one hand on the banister, the other on her swollen stomach. She didn't say a word. My mother stepped into the doorway just then, her face red and twisted. "You think this makes you noble?" she hissed. "Dragging your own family through the mud? You're selfish. You always have been. We were just trying to make the house livable. We sacrificed for you." I turned and walked up the stairs, past Madison, past the baby-themed picture frames, and into my room, where I locked the door for the last time. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a new email from GoFundMe. "Your case has been reviewed. Your evidence is sufficient to initiate donor notification protocol. We will begin issuing statements to major contributors regarding the mismanagement and offer optional refunds where applicable. Law enforcement liaison has been notified and may reach out for formal interview." I read it 3 times. They were going public. I opened the bedroom window. The night air was thick with June heat, but it felt different now, lighter. Around midnight, I heard a soft knock. "Come in." Madison stepped inside, holding a folder. Her eyes looked tired, but clear. "They're talking about suing you," she whispered. I snorted. "Let them. They'd have to expose themselves first." She sat down. "Do you want me to speak? To GoFundMe? Or the lawyer?" I turned to look at her. You'd do that? Madison shrugged. I might not be the best sister, but I'm not our mother. There was something broken in her tone, something soft and full of regret. For once, she looked like someone who'd seen the inside of a lie and didn't want to keep living in it. The next day, news broke. A local digital outlet published a piece titled, "Medical Fund Misused. Teen Cancer Survivor Speaks Out Against Family Theft." My name was redacted in the first version, but the comments were already vicious. I remember donating to this campaign. This is disgusting. Where's the accountability? GoFundMe needs to step up. That girl deserves justice. My mom's Facebook was scrubbed within hours. Her LinkedIn, too. But screenshots of her previous remodel journey posts started circulating. Photos of pendant lighting, cabinet upgrades, a smiling Madison at her baby shower with the caption, "All worth it, kitchen finally done just in time for our sweet girl's arrival." Now they looked like crime scene photos. The GoFundMe article didn't just stay local. By day 2, it was picked up by regional news. Then a BuzzFeed journalist retweeted it with the caption, "Another case of fundraiser fraud. But this time it's a cancer survivor turning the tables." By day 4, I was fielding emails from news producers and advocacy groups. People with names I didn't recognize, but titles that sounded important. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't chasing headlines. I was chasing accountability. Chatu Legal Aid Clinic scheduled my formal intake interview with a volunteer attorney, a sharp woman named Valerie Klein. Silver hair, precise posture, and the kind of eyes that didn't blink unless necessary. She laid out the next steps while flipping through my folder. "We'll initiate a cease and desist letter if your parents continue harassing you, and we'll push for full restitution in the civil complaint. Given your age at the time of the fundraiser, we'll argue fiduciary misconduct. Depending on the DA's response, criminal charges are still on the table." I nodded, stiff in the chair. Then Valerie looked up. "Are you ready for pushback? They might say you're lying, that you're bitter, that you're overreacting." "They already have," I said. "They said I was ungrateful." A flicker of something crossed her face. Not pity. Something more powerful. Maybe respect. "Then you'll do fine." Back home, the silence was louder than ever. My father avoided me entirely, disappearing into his garage or fake phone calls. My mother pretended I didn't exist, slamming drawers and muttering media circus under her breath like it was a spell to make me vanish. Madison, however, kept showing up. She started eating meals in my room, quietly, like we were refugees from the same war, hiding out in a foxhole. Sometimes she'd bring old photos of us as kids, me in the hospital, her next to my bed wearing a handmade Sophie Strong pin. "I think I wanted it to be about me too," she admitted one night. "Not the cancer, but the attention. I didn't know how to be invisible." I didn't answer right away. Then, "So you let them rewrite my story?" Her eyes were wet. "Yeah. But now you're here?" "I am. That had to be enough. Not forgiveness, but participation." By the end of the week, the donor notification emails went out. More than 270 people received a message from GoFundMe stating that funds meant for Sophie Lang may have been misused, and that refund requests could be submitted, or the donations could be redirected to a verified account Sophie now controlled. Some refunds came, but most sent messages instead. "We don't want the money back. We want them to answer for what they did." If she needs anything else, tell her she's not alone. One donor, a retired nurse from Sacramento, mailed me a handwritten letter. I gave because I believed in your fight. I'm proud. You're still fighting, just in a different way now. Then came the first legal retaliation. A manila envelope arrived at the legal clinic addressed to me. Inside, a cease and desist letter signed by a private attorney hired by my parents, accusing me of defamation, slander, and willful mischaracterization of family finances. Valerie laughed as she tossed it on her desk. Classic scare tactic. They'll fold once we file discovery motions. They're bluffing. They don't want this in court. Still, it rattled me. They were willing to destroy me just to preserve their lie. That same night, I walked into the kitchen for water and found my mother staring into the fridge like it held the answers. "You've humiliated us," she said without turning around. I set the glass on the counter. "You humiliated yourselves. I just stopped protecting it." She turned slowly. Her eyes were tired, darker than I remembered. The woman who once clutched my chemo schedule like scripture now looked like a stranger with peeling mascara and a twitch in her jaw. "Do you have any idea what this is doing to us?" I stepped forward. "Do you have any idea what it's done? To me? To know that the people who were supposed to love me used my pain as a down payment on quartz counters?" Tears welled up, but I didn't let them fall. She sat down hard at the table. For once, she didn't speak. She just looked small, and I didn't feel sorry. 2 days later, Valerie scheduled our first mediation prep. The goal: push for a public written apology, full financial restitution, and legal acknowledgement of misused fiduciary duty. If they refused, we'd file the lawsuit, and GoFundMe was prepared to submit a victim impact statement on my behalf. "You're about to change more than your life, Sophie," Valerie said. "You're setting precedent." That night, Madison knocked. "I need to show you something." She pulled out a thin folder, older than mine, weathered from being handled too often. Inside, a handwritten journal from my mother. Dated 2017 to 2018, fundraiser entries, plans, budget notes. One page, in sharp cursive, said, $30K left, enough for the remodel. No one will ask once she's better. This is our reward. I stared at it. No metaphor, no ambiguity, just the truth, in her own hand. Madison looked at me. "I don't care what happens to them anymore. If you need me to testify, I'm in." And that was it. No redemption arc. No tears. Just the quiet certainty of alignment. The room was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere. Sterile, controlled. Like someone had airbrushed all the emotion out of it and replaced it with polite tension. A round wooden table sat in the center, flanked by 4 plastic chairs. 1 pitcher of water. No labels. No warmth. My legal rep, Valerie, sat to my left. Madison was beside me. Not as a co-plaintiff, not officially, but as a voluntary witness. Her presence had changed the tone of everything. It told them, "You no longer control the family narrative." That door, opposite side of the table, filled slowly. My father, stiff in an old blazer he only wore to funerals. My mother, in a cardigan too bright for her expression. Her lips were pressed into a thin, trembling line. Their attorney, a man named Craig, with a soft voice and sharp teeth, took the final chair. Valerie started first. "Let's begin." She laid out the terms, one by one. full financial restitution of the remaining funds misused from the GoFundMe account, $41,703, a formal public written apology to Sophie, to the donors, and to GoFundMe, published on the original campaign page and social media, an acknowledgement of fiduciary breach, a signed statement conceding misuse of funds intended for a minor, and finally, no retaliatory action or contact with Sophie, including social defamation or indirect statements. My mother shifted in her seat like the fabric burned her. My father scoffed. "This is blackmail." "No," Valerie said calmly. "It's accountability." Their lawyer leaned forward. "Let's not escalate. Perhaps we can revisit some of the more aggressive demands." "Which part felt aggressive?" Valerie said coolly. "The money that isn't yours, or the apology for stealing it?" The table went quiet. Then my mother spoke, for the first time. "I was scared," she said, voice shaking. "After the chemo, after the hospital bills. I thought we'd lose the house. I thought we deserved something for surviving it all." I looked at her, really looked. "You didn't survive it?" "I did." Her face cracked just slightly. "You used my body to make yourself a hero," I said. "Then you used my pain to upgrade your kitchen. And when I said something, you called me ungrateful." Craig put a hand on her wrist. "Elaine, no," she snapped. "Let me finish." She turned to me. "You think we were monsters, but you don't know what it was like. Watching you shrink to skin and bones, wondering if I'd have to bury my child. And then, when you got better, when the money was still sitting there, I just wanted something to feel beautiful again." I said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Madison, beside me, exhaled sharply. "You didn't spend it to feel beautiful. You spent it because you could. Because no one stopped you. Because you knew Sophie was too quiet to fight back. And there it was. The real betrayal. Not the theft, but the assumption I would stay silent forever." Their lawyer asked for a 15-minute break. Outside, Valerie turned to me. "They're panicking. She's cracking. And your sister backing you just shattered their confidence. Be ready." When we returned, Craig cleared his throat. "We'll agree to the financial restitution and the no-contact clause, but we want the public apology to remain private, limited to a statement submitted to GoFundMe, not posted on social platforms." I looked at Valerie. She looked at me. "My call." I turned back to Craig. "Then we don't settle." His mouth opened and closed. Valerie leaned in. "Discovery starts next week. We'll request text logs, bank account access, deleted Facebook archives, and Madison's sworn statement. If this goes to court, your clients risk exposure that extends beyond GoFundMe. Civil liability could expand to defrauding charitable donations across state lines. Silence. And then my father, the man who hadn't looked me in the eyes in weeks, muttered, "Fine, we'll post it." My mother flinched like she'd been slapped, but she didn't argue. She knew it was over. 2 days later, the apology went live. To all those who donated in support of our daughter Sophie, we regretfully acknowledge that we misused funds raised under the intention of her long-term medical care. At the time, we made emotional decisions that resulted in financial actions that were inappropriate and wrong. We apologize to Sophie and to every donor who contributed in good faith. We are working to restore the full amount to her and accept accountability for our breach of trust. The comments were swift, some angry, Some heartbroken, most grateful that someone finally said it out loud. That night, Madison and I sat in the backyard, watching the porch light buzz against a humid. Kai, she passed me a can of Sprite and said, "You could have burned the whole house down." "But you didn't." I smiled faintly. "Not yet." She laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from her in years. 3 weeks after the public apology went live, the check arrived, $41,703.86, certified, cleared, issued from an account I no longer had access to. The memo line read, "Restitution, Sophie Lang." I stared at it for a long time. Not because of the number, but because of the handwriting. My father's. Sharp, blocky, careful like everything he did when he was trying to appear moral. They didn't reach out again. Not a text, not a letter. Not a threat. The house went quiet. The kind of quiet you don't fix, just leave behind. I cashed the check, transferred half into a savings account, and used the rest to cover the tuition gap at my dream university. Not the local school they pushed me toward. Not the safe choice. No. This one was mine. I signed the lease on a small apartment near campus. A walk-up, nothing fancy. Exposed brick, chipped railing, but it had light, and peace, and locks I controlled. Lena helped me move in. Madison helped too. Quieter now, but steadier. We didn't talk about the court, or the statement, or what our parents were doing. We just carried boxes and built bookshelves. Sometimes, that's all healing looks like. The week before classes started, I received a package. No return address. Inside, an envelope, handwritten. "Dear Sophie, I donated $500 to your fundraiser when you were 12. I was battling cancer myself then, and your story gave me hope. I never asked where the money went. I just prayed it helped. After seeing your name again, not as a patient, but as a woman fighting for herself, I just wanted to say, you still give me hope. Julie Hernandez, your 5th grade teacher." I hadn't heard her name in years. I cried on the floor of my new apartment for 20 minutes. Not because I was sad, but because someone remembered the girl I had to forget too. Survive, a month later, I gave my first interview, not for press, not for drama, but for a small student publication at my college. The article headline read, "Justice After Survival, Sophie Lang on Fundraisers, Family, and Fighting for What's Yours." When the reporter asked what advice I'd give other survivors, I said, "Surviving is the first fight, but sometimes the second one is even harder. Surviving your family's version of what happened. You're allowed to call a lie, even if they say it's love. I haven't spoken to my parents since mediation. I don't plan to. Some people get closure with hugs. I got mine with legal paperwork and a locked front door. Madison calls sometimes, not often. But when she does, she always says the same thing at the end. I'm proud of you. And I always answer, took me long. Enough.